So what is before you this evening is essentially a transfer of a contract. Back in the summer, we started a process of looking for a consultant to assist us in assessing the potential for the formation of a stormwater utility here in the city of Moscow. It's something that we envision that's probably in our future, and we needed some expert assistance, if you will, for folks that have done this before and could help us figure out what it might look like and the type of components that should be part of a utility if we indeed form one. So we went through the normal selection process, go out for requests for qualifications, review the statements of qualifications, selection process, and eventually end up with a contract for services. And in your packet this evening, you'll find on page 49 the master agreement for professional services. Now this is the agreement that we're using on these types of projects now, where you have a master agreement and then a task order that is attached to it, and it could have multiple task orders depending on the type of work that you're doing. But this master agreement is used for most of our contracts of this nature anymore. Within that contract, actually on page 52, in paragraph number 7, is an item called assignment. And this has to do with the transfer of the contract from Cardno, who's our original consultant, to someone else. What has happened is that Cardno began the work, and they got about 30% of the way through the project. And then the corporate headquarters of Cardno decided they were going to make a change in their business model, and we're no longer going to be serving anybody other than the federal government as customers. So that caught us up in the midst of our project with them. We are not a federal entity. We are obviously a local entity. And so we fall outside of that realm of the type of customers that are going to continue serving. So really what then came to pass was the need to address what to do next. And so that's what we are looking at this evening. There were several options that were defined that we could pursue. One of those would be to essentially start over, terminate the contract with Cardno, even though we're roughly a third of the way along, perhaps go back to the second place firm that was in the selection process back last summer, negotiate a new contract, pick up really at the 30% point, but also have to backtrack a bit and recover some ground that we already covered to familiarize the new firm with information that we'd already gone through. So that's one option. The second option would be to continue with Cardno, and they agreed to do this, but to then allow Cardno to subcontract the services with another consultant by the name of Aspect Engineering, or Aspect Consulting, with the idea that Cardno would just really then act as a pass-through. They would have a management role, direct interaction between us and the consultant being Cardno, but then pass all that information through to Aspect and then pass the bills back and forth, if you will. Obviously, there likely would be some markup there because of administrative costs and financial handling fees. The reason they suggested that Aspect would be the consultant of choice for a subcontract is that all of their stormwater related people that used to work for Cardno who were on our contract picked up and went to Aspect Consultant. So all of the engineers and planners and folks that were actually doing our project en masse moved over to Aspect. And so they felt it was a good move to, in essence, follow the knowledge and the professional skill set that moved from Cardno to Aspect and the people that we were working with on this project. So that was the second option, would be to continue our contractual relationship with Cardno, but through the use of a subconsultant in Aspect Consulting. The third option presented is a transfer of the contract. So essentially to assign the contract that was originally between the city and Cardno, to reassign it to Aspect Consultants so that Cardno gets out of the middle of it, they go away, and then we just continue the project with Aspect Consulting using the same individuals that we've been working with from day one. So that's where the assignability clause comes into play in our initial contract. So staff has gone through this. We've taken a look at the statement of qualifications that was given to us by Aspect at our request, so we could get an understanding of what their firm capability is, what it was in essence before this group of stormwater folks moved over there, and then of course what it is today with the addition of those individuals. We have found that they are a well-qualified firm, and they're certainly capable of continuing the type of work at a quality we believe that would be commensurate with what we were seeing from Cardno, in particular because we're seeing the same people performing the work. But they have other folks on staff that are also well qualified in the stormwater field and dealing with the kind of work that's involved here. So it's a good addition of services and capabilities beyond even what Cardno had with this change. So with that, staff is recommending that we reassign or allow the reassignment, I should say, of the contract from Cardno to Aspect. And if you look at the language in the contract, essentially it says that they are not allowed, Cardno is not allowed to assign the contract to somebody else unless the city gives permission. So the document that is on page 83 addresses that assignment and assumption of the consulting services agreement and provides consent. So what it says in here is that the city consents to assignment of Cardno's contract to Aspect Consulting. And staff recommends that we pursue that course of action. And with that, I'd try to answer any questions that you might have.
This was on Public Works and Finance
Yeah.
on the 23rd.
Yeah, we did go through this in some detail at Public Works Finance, and it seems to me that the assignment is the way to go that staff recommends. It seems like the cleanest way. All the people will be familiar with it. Going back and starting over is going to be an expensive and time-consuming problem for us. So I think we should go ahead, and I would so move that we authorize staff to provide Cardno GS express written consent for the assignment of the Cardno GS Stormwater Utility Study Professional Services Agreement to Aspect Consulting per Section 7 of the executed master agreement for professional services.
I'll second.
I had a question.
Okay, Gina.
So you cited 3 alternatives to us just earlier. Is this the one that cuts Cardno out of the middle, or is this keeping Cardno in the line?
This takes Cardno completely out of the picture.
Beautiful. That's what I wanted to know. Thank
Walter
you.
had a question as well, huh?
Yeah, and I want to apologize to staff that I didn't make a call this afternoon. I saw this on Saturday and forgot about it. A question, maybe not for Les, but for legal. In the proposed agreement to do, and I have no problem with what we're doing. I'm okay with it. In the agreement itself, however, on page 83, Rod, of the packet, the 4th whereas on the first page.
Okay.
This says, whereas the consultant desires to consent to the city's assignment. The city is not assigning, Cardno is assigning. I would suggest the following wording of the 4th whereas, that it read, whereas consultant desires to assign its rights and obligations under the agreement to assignee, and have assignee assume consultant's rights and obligations, et cetera, under the agreement.
I got a question on that because the way I read the earlier part of the contract, which is on page 52, unless I'm mistaken, it says that it is expressly agreed and understood by the parties that the engineer shall not have the right to assign. So the way I read that, Cardno does not have the right to assign or change anything. It is up to us if they bow out of it. Am I correct on that?
No, Your Honor, on
Yes.
the original, it says they didn't have the right to assign unless the city expressly agreed. So if the city agrees, then they can, we agree to allow them to assign it.
Okay.
So and this goes along with the argument that, or the discussion we had on the paragraph A under the agreement. Consenting, that would make more sense with what Walter's
Yeah,
recommending.
this has been changed from the original version we had at committee, because I had a similar question at that time, and Rod
And we made the
agreed with
change,
that.
and we did make that changes, but the whereas did not get
And
changed.
I don't know if this, I don't know if the
correspond with
whereas
that.
was in there in the first place and I missed it, or if I just see it now. But Mayor, the way I read it, and Rod I think is agreeing, the original consultant can assign, but only with our agreement. And that's what we're attempting to do here.
And so basically what you're recommending, and I think I would agree on the whereas, would strike consultant, so it'd be whereas city, and insert city desires to consent to, and we'd strike city there and insult consultant's assignment.
That'd be another way to do it.
Well, seems to me like that'd be the easiest way to do
That's the cleanest.
it. Yeah,
Either one.
without doing a whole bunch of blah, blah, blah.
No, and that would be,
Blowing.
that would fall in line with what the discussion was when we changed the body of the agreement.
Yeah, I'd be okay with it.
Okay. Let me read this motion. Jim made the motion, John seconded, to authorize staff to provide Cardno GS express written consent for the assignment of Cardno GS Stormwater Utility Study Professional Service Agreement to Aspect Consulting per Section 7 of the executed master agreement for professional services. We all good on it? I'll start with John.
Aye.
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 All right. Aye.
And aye.
Okay. Thank you, Les.